Everyone can hear. Okay, great. So, hello everyone. I'm excited to join you all today to talk about social media. This is the second part to last week's webinar on harnessing supporters and handling detractors. You don't need to have listened in on the first one in order to follow this webinar, however. We'll just be covering some slightly different topics and we'll go in the weeds a bit more. If you did listen to the first webinar, some of this might be a brief repeat, but you can expect mostly new content. And all of this content, previous and today, will be available in a recorded format as well as PDF versions. So I am Stephanie Strickland, and I am the Vice President of Salter Mitchell PR based in Tallahassee, Florida. We work in the government and election space through VR Systems, which provides software and hardware technology to modernize elections. We also handle social media for clients on a pretty much daily basis, whether it's content creation, Facebook ads, or filming an Instagram story or Facebook Live. To start us off, here are some house rules. Everyone is muted right now, so if you do have a question, please write it in the Q&A box and I'll address them at the end of the webinar. We'll be monitoring that box throughout the webinar, so if there are any technical issues, hopefully you know more, let us know. I'll send a PDF version of this deck around to Derek and Paige, who will distribute it to the group. And if you have further questions after that, my email address is included at the end of the presentation, and I'd welcome you to reach out. So the four main things we'll cover today are how to deal with detractors, trolls, negative comments, and the myriad of unpleasantries that exist in the modern social media era. We will go over what a cohesive media policy and response strategy looks like, so you will have some armor against those detractors. We'll touch on creating content and then scheduling and tracking it to maximize your return on investment. And lastly, we'll touch briefly on the big trends for social media this year and how you can leverage them for your own use. So, detractors, trolls, critics, they go by many different names and are one of the biggest pain points for groups who have active social media platforms. Frankly, they are frustrating. In this section, we're going to discuss strategic steps and guidelines for dealing with the negativity. So, block, delete, and hide. Should you? Ideally, no, no, and no, but let's break down each one. So, for blocking, simply you can't. I mean, you can, but prepare for the legal consequences now. This screenshot is from a January 7th article from the Washington Post. It states, public officials cannot block critical comments on digital platforms used to conduct official government business and to interact with constituents. It's a violation of First Amendment rights. All of this is really, really new, and the Supreme Court hasn't made any official ruling on the matter, but it's clear that blocking anyone is a risky tactic. Not everyone who you may block will go to this extent, but they do have a leg to stand on in court. However, social media channels do have their own terms of service, which usually mean that people who post threats or use profane language can be reported and blocked by the platform itself. So deleting comments is almost the same thing and can get you in hot water with those looking to make trouble. You as a public official do have your own First Amendment rights, though. According to the New Jersey ACLU, when elected officials are speaking as private individuals, they can express their views like anyone else, including on social media. The First Amendment protects their right to limit their audience or curate the messages on their personal social media accounts, just like it protects any other member of the public. But when officials act on behalf of the government, they are subject to the limits that the First Amendment imposes on them as government actors. If a public official invites comments on a social media page concerning public matters or otherwise intentionally designates it as a space for public discussion, the social media page may become a limited or designated public forum. Where public forums are involved, public officials cannot exclude people from accessing the page just because the official disagrees with them. Now, if something is really bad and you do want to delete it, your best course of action is to create a social media policy or response strategy to cover yourself and to justify your decision, which we'll get into later in our discussion. For hiding comments, this can be almost worse than deleting them, since the constituent will not be informed and may never find out that their comment was hidden. They'll still think that it's up on the page. It makes you seem secretive, and that constituent's friends can see the post and make comments which may or may not be worthy of hiding. So now you've censored them as well inadvertently. So now that you're probably a little annoyed with everything that I just said, let's talk about ways to handle comments without having to delete or hide them. One of the first things to do is to differentiate between a troll and a hurt constituent. Sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference. So to help, ask yourself, do they seek the truth? Are they asking real and valid questions? Do they remain respectful? And do they follow the social media guidelines laid out by each platform? If so, I believe they always deserve some kind of response to address their issue. If it's not something you want to discuss online, offer to speak with them over the phone or in person. Trolls typically try to get a reaction and incite anger, make wild and overblown accusations, use profanity, angry language, or make threats, or oftentimes they also remain anonymous. They don't have a profile photo, or if they do, it's a stock photo, and they provide very limited information about themselves. People are emboldened to say worse things anonymously than they ever would do that to your face. The website Mashable has a great list of trolls you'll find online, and I'd like to go through some of them now, along with response strategies if you encounter them in the wild. So the first troll is the "what do you meme" troll. This troll responds to posts with vague, weird memes that are confusing at best and insulting at worst. They don't have a lot to say, and they don't want to offer a direct opinion, but hey, pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? So strategy for response here is to ignore. Who knows what they mean, and it's not really worth guessing or assuming. The second troll is the "why is this news" troll. No matter what you do or talk about, they don't care, and instead of ignoring it like someone who doesn't care should, they want you to know that they really don't care. So strategies for response here is to explain to them why this is indeed news. Let them know who the post is for and why they should care. Offer to provide some information. So, for example, you could say, we have many constituents who are affected by this, and we wanted to share it for them. You can also ask what kind of post they'd like to see. If this isn't news to them, then what is? Kill them with kindness and just let them air their opinions. And lastly, you can ignore. If they don't think this is news, it's not really your job to convince them. Everyone should just move on. So the next one is the "do no harm" troll. These trolls are confusing, and most often than not, they're very confused themselves. These trolls are uninformed and post weird but harmless content. Sometimes what they comment is not at all relevant to the topic at hand. So to respond, you can correct their mistakes with facts when you can and if it's important. That shows you are knowledgeable and paying attention. But if their comments are so off base that you can't think of anything to say in a 5-second time frame, you can ignore. Other people will often take care of them for you by saying, "What?" So an example here of someone posting some utter nonsense. The user says that organic vegetables don't have any flavor, and pesticides keep the bugs from eating all the flavor. So if you are a big supporter of organic produce and that's a platform for you, this might warrant a comment of correction like, actually, organic produce can have more flavor. Check out more information here and link them. If not, you can ignore. This guy actually posts weird things so often that he has his own Reddit page. So I'm thinking he might be a professional troll or an on-purpose troll, and I really actually hope that is the case. So next we have the broken record troll. they make the same comment over and over and over. So a suggestion here would be to use their tactics against them. If there is a response you can offer it every time they bring up whatever the topic is. Your response can be to offer facts, to call out something hateful they said, or to direct them to an online or offline resource. We call this the double down method. Don't let them zap your energy by making you feel like you need a unique comment to each of theirs. You can use copy and paste just as well as they can. So an example here is someone trolling Senator Amy Klobuchar, wanting to know repeatedly who is tweeting for her when she's making live appearances. The obvious answer, I think we all know, is her staff. And I think it's okay for her staff to reply and say that they are tweeting on her behalf when she's unavailable. And maybe they did do that, but this person is trying to make some kind of point. But either way, they could repeat their same answer and everyone could move on with their lives. And by the way, this person's posting was so frequent that my husband alerted me to this example because it was going semi-viral on Twitter. The next one is the wet blanket, otherwise known as the negative Nancy. No offense to anyone named Nancy in the room. So no effort is enough, and there is always something wrong with whatever initiative you're spearheading. Instead of appreciating something nice, they look to question it or find something wrong. So to respond, recognize their feelings and let them know you hear them. Clearly something to them is unsatisfactory and maybe you can help them out. If you have facts, respond to them or direct them to more information if they are questioning something you did or posted. You can also ignore them if you decide there is nothing you can offer that will really make them happy. Sometimes people just want to vent online and there really isn't a solution to come to and they're not really looking for one either. So an example here from our beloved Washington State Association of Counties, they had a commenter questioning why they were spending money on socks when there are bigger issues to attend to, like fallen officers and homelessness. Now, what's frustrating here is that this commenter is doing a pretty harsh either-or assessment. Because the association is doing a sock campaign means they must be ignoring pretty much everything else, right? No. So this person definitely seems to have some time on their hands, judging by the frequency of their posts. So you might be entering a saga if you respond, but a simple response could be, thanks for the love, since she said she loves the counties, and let's play up the positive here. The socks were a small portion of our local advocacy budget. The larger issues like fallen officers and homelessness are always top priorities. Click here to read more about what we're doing to address those, and leave it at that. I don't think a further response would be necessary. And you'll notice I suggest pointing them to outside sources for information a lot, and I think it's a good strategy because it gets them off social media for at least a minute, and it helps spread information to whoever might be reading. So if you have those online resources, that's a good thing to point them to. And next we have really angry people. Mashable calls these bad people, and I don't think anyone is inherently bad, but there are plenty of really hurt and angry people who are looking to unload on everyone and everything. These are people who are violent, irrational, and or bigoted. To respond, I would suggest reporting them on the platform. Twitter is not the best about policing extreme trolls, but Facebook has a little bit better terms of service against bullying and harassment, and you can report someone and make them do the dirty work for you, and they'll remove them. If you get few and far between comments like this, I would suggest ignoring, but if there ever is a case to delete, this is it. Again, we're going to talk about creating social media policies that will lay out on your page what you will and will not tolerate when it comes to comments. So explicit content alerts. I have another example here from Washington State Association of Counties with a commenter being, well, extremely profane, and the association did give me permission to share this. In this case, I don't think the commenter would have a very strong case if these comments were deleted, so I would delete away here. If you want to be really cautious, report them to Facebook. I think this is a good case for them to block the user. As the association did here, it's always a good idea to screenshot it and just have it for your records. So the lookalike troll, I added this myself after getting some questions about it, and I think it's an important one that Mashable missed. This is what I'm calling the lookalike troll, which are those who try to hijack personas or accounts. This can be through creating parody accounts or trying to do a straight up impersonation. So strategies here is to report if you can. On Twitter, you are allowed to create parody accounts, but they must state the following to comply with Twitter's rules. So the bio should clearly indicate that the user is not affiliated with the subject of the account. Non-affiliation can be indicated by incorporating, for example, words like parody, fake, and fan or commentary. Non-affiliation should be stated in a way that can be understood by the intended audience. The same goes for the account name, which is different than the username or the @handle. That should clearly indicate that the user is not affiliated with the subject of the account, following the same guidelines as the bio. So Facebook encourages you to report fake accounts and will investigate and potentially remove those accounts, but know that this can take some time. In that vein, I think immediately you should mark your accounts as official in your description so that you can limit any confusion. Some other things to note is to not engage. You will likely only give them more ammunition. Secure any handles or profile names that you think could be used against you, like X County sucks, things like that. Monitor the parody to see if you can provide any content to the contrary on your own pages. See what value, even if it's small, you can get out of their beef with you, whatever that is, and then use it to inform your messaging and educational initiatives whenever possible. So now that we have covered all of that, how do we protect ourselves if and when we do need to delete content or handle a really heinous troll? The best way is to create a social media policy and a response plan, and we're going to go through both of those now. So what is a social media policy? It is a code of conduct that provides guidelines for employees who post content on the internet, either as part of their job or as a private person. Like Goldilocks, we want your policy to be just right. Too many are either too sparse and won't hold up in court if they had to, or too complicated and full of legalese that your staff can't decipher what it is they are and are not supposed to do. So what should your social media policy include? Here are a few of the elements that we'll talk about. The first is employee access. This outlines if and how many employees are allowed to use social media during work hours and how they can get the credentials necessary to do so. And this is an example from Marin County's social media policy that clearly outlines that, so you can have a little bit more control over the content that's getting out there on your pages. Next is acceptable use. This designates the differences between personal, professional, and official usage and marks which accounts you own are which. So most major companies have employees put something in their social media profile that they work for whatever company, but all opinions are their own. This doesn't mean they should feel like they have free license to be hateful, but it does alleviate some of the burden on the company if their employees go rogue. So this covers the editorial requirements for content, what you can and cannot share. Prohibited content is the biggie for including and sharing on your social media pages. What kind of content and comments are not allowed to be shared by internal and external users under the threat of deletion. That way you've posted that, they are aware, if they still decide to go against it, you have a much stronger case if someone pushes back up on you deleting something. So prohibited content, here's a list of content that you can prohibit in your plan, which includes threatening language, abusive comments, or language that is discriminatory. This was taken from the City of Sacramento's social media policy. So this is an example from the Orange County social media policy, which even states that its social media sites are not intended to be used in a way that guarantees the right to protected free speech. This version was last updated in 2010, I think, so I would check with your legal team to make sure that kind of language is still applicable, and that it's definitely, but it's definitely a good clause that will help you cover yourself if you need to delete content for an extreme reason. So this policy description helps safeguard government data and has guidelines on how to manage passwords and antivirus software. Again, I have an example from Orange County requiring its staff to have up-to-date software and banning automatic social feeds on its website. So to be compliant, social media content needs to be archived. So this policy helps spell that out for your staff. The Washington Public Records Act requires that government agencies preserve public records regardless of physical form. So this does include digital records created through social media and the metadata behind the records. So I believe this is included in general open meeting law training, but it's recommended to retain websites and social media in their original file format, which is HTML or WARC, and to retain website records for at least 7 years. So here's an example of AT&T's records management language. So there are plenty of sample policies floating out there, and one good resource is this link here. It has many different city and county social media policies you can review. Again, just make sure the language is up to date, since the legality side of social media seems to change almost every day. So another way to fairly monitor comments and trolls is through an objective written response strategy. Here's an example of a process you can run social media posts through to determine what response or action makes sense. This demonstrates that you are vetting everything objectively and not singling anyone out if it does come to removing content. It prompts you and your team with questions like, can you provide value? Are the facts correct? Are you dealing with a wannabe comedian? And then gives you suggested responses. So next, we're going to talk about scheduling and tracking content. After you have all of the what we call crisis plans in place, it's time to create a strategy for your content. And good social media marketing starts with a clear strategy and tactics. It helps to have a written plan that spells out your approach. And next, we'll outline what this plan should look like. So thanks to social media, the world is now like one giant focus group. Social listening leverages that reality to provide feedback on what you're doing and the insights for what you need to do next. Pay attention to relevant hashtags, influencer posts, online mentions, and then use that information to inform your content. This gives you a rapid glimpse of emerging trends, reactions to your new messages and activities, and your own impact on the people you are reaching. So after we've taken the time to listen, we move on to developing a clear strategy and tactics. Especially in an environment as fluid as social media, it helps to have a written plan that spells out our approach. And this plan must define clear roles, set goals and success measures, distinguish audiences, identify channels with the greatest potential, establish a brand voice or how you want to come across to your audience, set posting frequency and topics within an editorial and content calendar, and establish engagement processes, including a comment response policy. In the end, this plan should make it abundantly clear who you're talking to, how you want to sound, and where you're having conversations. So with the foundation laid out by the social media plan, you're ready to create content and manage accounts. What does your audience want? When planning your content, start by putting yourself in your constituents' shoes. What content would they most likely share? Is it news, images, or videos? We know that timing matters, but it's unique to your audience. Rather than following the average released in some recent study, study your audience and gain insights about their online habits to establish posting times that will work best to reach them. We know it works well on social, hence it's usually short and sweet, and pair that great copy with custom visuals, including graphics and video, to stop a scroller in their tracks. So when your strategy is planned out on a content calendar, it is easier to keep organized, focus on deadlines, and be more productive. This also saves a lot of time because I know how time-consuming social media is, and that is not even your first or second job. So a content calendar is anything used to plan, schedule, and organize content. This makes it easier to plan, and you can do this a week, a month, or however far ahead you'd like to plan. So to begin, we always recommend starting with at least 2 weeks worth of content, and this is an example of something you could use. This also limits approval time and surprise posts your team might include. If it's planned and vetted ahead of time, all the better, so you can jump on something that you want to talk about and time it appropriately. You can also physically schedule your content to go out through your social platforms or through a tool like Hootsuite, but make sure you keep an eye on that. Worst case scenario is something breaking happens and you have an awkward and ill-timed post that goes live. So after all that time spent planning and the creative brain power used in content creation, don't just send content out of your nest and hope it flies online. Be sure to regularly review analytics, native and third party, to see what's working and what could use tweaking. So take the cream of the crop and iterate that because you don't need to fix what's broken. See what's responding and keep doing that. Social media analytics provide a ton of valuable information about who your followers are, where they live, which content they prioritize, and how they interact with you on social media. And these insights can help you refine your strategy and best target your next social media post. So we're going to talk briefly about social media trends. Traditionally, the government has used its social platforms as a way to provide static information and updates on agencies and officials. But as social media continues to evolve, the government is recognizing these platforms as a tool rather than an initiative for public service delivery. To understand which trends are dominating social media and on what platform, we must examine which demographics are engaging with these platforms, how users are spending their time on these platforms, and what devices are they using for social networking. So we're going to cover 3 here in 2019 that are trending right now. So 1 is the rise of private groups and accounts, 2 is going live, and 3 is video content. So in 2018, Facebook group membership was at 40% with 1.4 billion people, which is more than half of Facebook's massive user base. They now use groups every month, and a few reasons why that is first is safety. We're all probably familiar with the Cambridge Analytica crisis and the secretive data mining that went on Facebook, and probably is still going on, to be honest. People still want to connect with friends, but in a seemingly more secure way, which private groups provide. Whether they really are more secure, the jury is out, but there is that perception. Facebook also makes it a priority. They have adjusted their algorithms to prioritize engagement with family, friends, and groups, and have deprioritized businesses, brands, and media content. Groups are also more niche. There are tons of specific groups that cater to all kinds of audiences looking to speak with like-minded people about their interests. So your entire Facebook friend group might not care about your crocheting hobby, but you better bet those crochet groups will embrace and support you. There is a sense of being able to speak more freely and honestly in a closed group, and engagement is usually very high and frequent. So similar to Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups provide a place for professionals with similar interests to share their insights. Employees in local government are using LinkedIn to connect with people who are subject matter experts in a particular area. So as elected officials, can you or should you create a private group to discuss an issue? This issue came up in Maine a few years back when a closed Facebook group focused on Brunswick schools had raised some red flags. Their group had 611 members who had to request admission to be approved by administrators, which included 4 town councilors and 4 local school board members. Now, this group didn't actively exclude anyone and no decisions were being made on the platform. It was just intended to be an opportunity for people to freely discuss issues. In Maine, a meeting involving 3 members of a public body must be accessible to the public, and there were a few discussions led by 3 school board members, which certainly leans into the problematic arena. And the whole question, the reason I even know about it, was that some people were complaining and a little critical of this being used in this way. So that being said, it's probably best to avoid making your own private group, especially not a secret group. But be aware that more and more people are joining members-only groups to share ideas, opinions, and frustrations. So next, we're going to talk about going live. So live streaming has become an important way local governments are increasing civic engagement. We have some stats and an example from a city council meeting on the screen. I'm going to talk through why you should live stream. Studies indicate that people tend to watch live videos 3 times longer than pre-recorded ones. It's not enough to post a video after an event. Your audience wants to watch it in real time. Also, you're meeting them where they are. People are no longer calling the courthouse to make complaints. They're doing it online, and that's where they already are getting the bulk of their information as well. And it's accessible. Those who may not be able to attend a meeting for multiple reasons can still be reached. So on the screen is an example from the Bay County Commission in Florida. They have an entire Facebook page dedicated to their live streams, which is not required, but a nice idea to keep it all in one place and easier for people to find. And so we're going to talk through how to set Facebook Live up for yourself and what things you should consider. So with public meeting laws, you need to announce live events ahead of time. Live does not mean surprise. So promote and share through your social media accounts and let people know the date, time, and what you'll cover. And so as a government employee, it is your role to communicate with constituents often, address problems proactively, and be as transparent as possible. And Facebook Live Q&As are a great way to engage with your audience in an easy to manage and budget-friendly way. This is great to do also if you are at an event. You can do interviews with people through it. It's a great tool to use in several different capacities. So that segues into video content. In 2019, you pretty much need to have some kind of video strategy, and we're going to talk through types of video content local governments should consider developing. Meaningful testimonial videos, recruitment videos showcasing the value system, awareness videos, and action-driven social media videos. So great video content is eye-catching, compels an emotional response, is tailored for the target demographic, has a clear objective, and is neither too long or too short. So here are some additional video tips. Set goals for your video. Create a 30 to 60-second video that you can use on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn newsfeeds. Repurpose your content where and when you can. And put your best foot forward in the first 10 seconds because viewers begin to drop off after the 10 to 15-second mark. So you need to capture them before you can. So I know we sped through that section, but I wanted to give some time for any comments. So that is all of what I have to talk about today. And I really appreciate you joining, and I hope you found the information helpful. So I will open the floor if there are any questions. So that's requiring posters on social media to have a public profile. So anyone who would be posting on your page, they need to have a public profile. Talking about policy. I think you could put that on your policy. I don't know if that would hold up. I think a lot of people don't have public profiles anymore. Usually people restrict things to their friends and family. So it would be kind of going against the norm, and I don't know if a lot of people would be in compliance, but you could certainly put that in your policy. But I don't know how well that would stand up if you were going to delete everyone who commented that did not have a public profile. Does that answer your question? Did I understand that correctly? Okay, great. Okay, so that was a question about the policy restraining employees to respond, kind of restraining them for responding kind of freely as their own personal kind of self, and then how that goes with the First Amendment. Okay. Yeah, so, if they are posting on behalf of you or the county, I think that will hold up, that they cannot post whatever they want. As a private individual, the one example that I shared was for, corporations. They do this, and I'll scroll back through there. You need to very clearly define what personal, professional, and official use are. And a lot of personal accounts, for big companies especially, will require their employees to say, all tweets and opinions are my own. I do work for the county or a company or whatever, but my opinions do not reflect the county or people who work there. And because you really can't tell them what they can and cannot do on their own term and on their private Facebook or social media platform, but as a professional, you certainly can dictate what they're using on county time. And it's always a good idea to maybe have them also say, all tweets and opinions are my own. It's a good, cover yourself kind of thing, so that they don't reflect badly on you, because you can't always control what people do. So does that answer your question? Let's see, I am looking. Yes, we had one. In regards to social media policy, what are your recommendations for employees logging in using a personal account versus a professional account tied to work email? Facebook specifically doesn't want to have dual accounts. What do you recommend employees use to access Facebook business pages, also considering public record laws? So for, I think the same kind of stands for employees wanting to use personal accounts. I think I would have an ironclad policy that they could use. I think you probably would want to restrict maybe your staff to, and maybe this kind of goes with the other question, I don't think you want official county stuff posted with other photos or personal, political, possibly things that they might share. So I think you'd probably want to have that in your policy that if they are going to use it, that this kind of content is allowed. And I think you probably just want to work with an employee who would agree to that, or don't give them, I wouldn't give them access. If you have someone who's pretty mild-mannered, shares pictures of their kids and, you know, not much else, and also can be a representation of you, that's probably fine. If someone is more vocal about certain things, that might be a little bit of a risk, and I just simply probably wouldn't let them have the credentials. Or yeah, I'm just reading back through that to see. Drug employees used to access Facebook business pages, also considering public record laws. So yeah, for I'm not sure if that has to do with business pages as far as like advertising, but make sure that you have your team in place. And I think that is one of the slides that we had here for employee access. You designate appropriate levels of use, and shall be limited only to those with a clear business purpose on the forum. So I think you can write this however you want and really just staff that those responsibilities accordingly, and go from there. So I hope that answered the question. And if not, if you have anything to follow up and I'm not hearing you well or answering this appropriately, I do have my email at the end, and I'd be happy to share more resources with you, or give you a written answer that might be easier to comprehend. Yes. That sounds great. Well, thank you all, and yeah, be in touch if you have any other questions, and I hope this was helpful. Thanks.